Hi, I'm Maya. I'm 25 years old, and this is the story of a night my father made me feel smaller than I ever thought possible, shrinking me down to a speck in my own chair with just a few casually thrown away words. Doubt it happened at my cousin Liza's graduation dinner, a sprawling, noisy family affair held in the private room of a swanky Italian restaurant. Crystal glasses gleamed under the warm glow of the chandeliers, and the air was thick with the scent of garlic bread and expensive perfume. Everyone was there, aunts and uncles I hadn't seen in years, all dressed in their finest. I was seated 2 seats away from my dad, close enough to see the proud glint in his eye as he stood up, tapping his fork gently against his champagne flute to get everyone's attention. The chatter died down. He smiled, a broad, genuine smile, and raised his glass high. His gaze settled on my older sister, Anna, who was sitting right beside him. "To Anna," he began, his voice booming with affection, "my brilliant daughter who always makes us proud. A senior project manager at 28. Responsible, successful. Simply everything a parent could ask for." A warm, collective murmur of agreement rippled through the table. Glasses clanked, and aunts nodded in approval, their eyes soft with admiration for Anna. It was a perfect picture book moment. Then his eyes slid to me. I saw it happen in slow motion, the way his proud smile softened, not into warmth, but into something thinner, more patronizing. It was a look I knew well, a precursor to a well-meaning joke that never quite landed as one. "And Maya?" he said, his tone shifting into a lighter, almost teasing register that made my stomach clench. "Well, she's still trying to figure herself out. My free spirit. Some people just take a little longer to grow up, I guess." The silence that followed was absolute and suffocating. It was as if someone had sucked all the sound out of the room. The cheerful clatter from the main dining room faded into a distant hum. I saw, from the corner of my eye, our young waiter frozen mid-step, a basket of bread in his hand, unsure whether to advance or retreat. A hot flush crept up my neck, burning my cheeks. I let out a short, awkward laugh, a feeble sound that was meant to show I was in on the joke, that it didn't sting. But inside, my chest felt like it was caving in, a sudden, crushing weight pressing down on my heart. Across the table, Anna's eyes met mine. They were filled with a pained sympathy, and she gave me a small, sad smile. But she didn't say a word. No one did. And my dad? He just picked up his fork and took a bite of his salmon, chewing thoughtfully as if he'd merely commented on the weather. What no one at that table, especially my father, seemed to understand is that I have figured myself out. I've always been the creative one, the one who saw a world of possibility in a blank canvas or an empty room. I work as an independent interior designer, carefully running small projects and designing apartments for local clients. My business cards might not be as thick as Anna's, and my office is just the sunlit corner of my apartment, filled with fabric swatches and paint samples. It's not a glamorous, high-powered career, but it's mine. I built it from scratch, with my own 2 hands and a vision all my own. And in that silent, heavy moment, I realized that in his eyes, it would never be enough. Dad never saw it that way. To him, success wasn't a feeling of fulfillment or a collection of small, hard-won victories. It was a checklist, a steady, predictable salary deposited every 2 weeks, a big house in a neighborhood with impeccable curb appeal, and a flawless, smiling family photo ready for Facebook uploads. It was a life that looked good from the outside, first and foremost. And Anna, my wonderful, capable older sister, had ticked every single box with effortless grace, a prestigious corporate job with a corner office on the horizon, a sleek sedan she owned outright, and a perfectly charming fiancé named Mark who played golf with our dad. Me. I lived in a cozy but undeniably worn studio apartment where the morning light revealed the gentle peeling of paint near the window frames. My collection of houseplants, a pothos, a fiddle-leaf fig, a stubborn snake plant, seemed to perpetually hover on the brink of death, their leaves browning at the tips, no matter how diligently I watered them or researched their care. But that apartment, with all its charming imperfections, was mine. Every piece of thrift store furniture I had refinished, Every art print I had carefully hung was a testament to a life I was building for myself. On my own terms, the sting of the graduation dinner, however, didn't fade. It only festered. The humiliation didn't end there. A week later, Dad called Anna, and only Anna, to help him plan my mom's surprise 50th birthday dinner. I found out about the entire event, the venue, the guest list, the menu through a blurry, cheerful Instagram story posted by a cousin. It was a video panning across a long table at a bustling steakhouse, filled with laughing aunts, uncles, and both my beaming parents. They were all there, a perfect, complete family circle. And I'd been on the outside of it when I finally gathered the courage to confront him. My voice trembling with hurt, he simply sighed, as if I were being deliberately difficult. "Maya, don't take it personally," he said, his tone infuriatingly calm. "It was more of a family planning thing, logistics, budgets. You wouldn't really get it. Wouldn't get it?" The words echoed in my head, a cruel and dismissive mantra. I was his daughter, too. The erasure was so complete, so casual. It got worse. I later learned from a well-meaning but gossipy aunt that he had told her I still rely on him for money, painting a picture of a helpless daughter constantly needing bailouts. This was despite the fact that I hadn't asked him for a single cent in over a year, since a brief, desperate month between clients. He had turned my hard-fought independence into a casual joke. Another point of contrast to make Anna's polished life shine even brighter, the breaking point. The moment the last thread of my composure snapped came at Grandpa's retirement party. Dad was giving a speech again. He loved the sound of his own voice in a quiet room, loved his role as the family patriarch. And right in front of everyone, with a room full of our extended family looking on, he looked directly at Anna and said, "If there's one thing I've learned from raising 2 daughters, it's that hard work and discipline always win in the end." Anna proved that. Then his gaze swept over me, not with malice, but with a kind of passive disappointment. Not everyone has her determination. The air left my lungs. In that moment, I wasn't just overlooked. I was a lesson in what not to be. He looked directly at me when he said it. His gaze wasn't angry or even unkind. It was matter of fact, as if he were simply stating a universal truth that everyone, including me, needed to accept. A hot, prickling wave of shame washed over me from the roots of my hair down to my fingertips. My throat tightened, making it impossible to swallow the lump of hurt that had lodged there. The polite, scattered applause that followed his speech sounded like it was coming from the end of a long tunnel. I focused on a small crack in the wooden tabletop, tracing its path with my eyes, my one desperate anchor in a room that was suddenly spinning. All I wanted to do was to disappear, to dissolve into the air and escape the weight of dozens of pitying, curious glances. That night, I went home to my quiet studio. The silence, which usually felt peaceful, now felt heavy and accusatory. I didn't cry. Instead, a strange, cold calm settled over me. I kicked off my heels, made a strong cup of coffee, and opened my laptop, the screen's blue glow the only light in the darkness. I pulled up every project file, every mood board, every photograph of a space I had transformed. And I got to work. I stayed up until 3 a.m., the only sounds being the hum of the refrigerator and the frantic clicking of my mouse. I reworked my entire portfolio from the ground up, sharpening the descriptions, enhancing the images, weaving the story of my creative vision into a compelling narrative. I submitted my best designs: the minimalist loft, the cozy, book-filled cafe corner, the sun-drenched family kitchen, to every national and international competition I could find. This wasn't a frantic, desperate reaction anymore. The burning need to prove him wrong had cooled and hardened into a quiet, unshakable resolve. I was doing it for me, for the girl who saw potential in peeling paint and believed that creating a beautiful, functional space was a worthy life's work. 6 months later, on a perfectly ordinary Tuesday morning, I was sorting through my mail, half asleep and expecting nothing but bills and flyers, when I saw it. An email with the subject line, "Congratulations. You are a National Design Showcase winner." My breath hitched. I read it once, then twice, then a third time, my heart hammering against my ribs. My Haven Loft design, a project for a young artist that I had poured my soul into, had been selected. It wasn't just a win. It was a seismic shift. Suddenly, my name, Maya, was printed in sleek, glossy magazines next to my photographs. Industry blogs featured my work. My inbox, once so quiet, flooded with inquiries. Among them was my first major contract, a request to design the flagship store for an emerging, eco-friendly clothing brand, a project with a budget I had only ever dreamed of. The world, it seemed, had finally decided to see me not as a free spirit still figuring it out, but as a designer with a vision. When my dad saw my name in the newspaper, tucked into a corner of the business section in a feature titled Fresh Faces in Design, he called. The ringtone cut through the quiet of my studio, a sound I both dreaded and secretly hoped for. I let it ring 3 times, my heart a frantic drum against my ribs. Before I picked up Dot, there was a long pause on the other end, filled only by the sound of his breathing. He didn't apologize. There was no "I was wrong," no "I'm proud of you," not in the way I had spent a lifetime scripting in my head. Instead, his voice was softer, quieter than I had ever heard it, stripped of its usual booming confidence. He just said, "You've done well, Maya." 4 words. Simple, unadorned, and utterly transformative. And for the first time, that was enough. The old, hungry part of me that would have craved a grander declaration, a full-throated admission of his error, simply went quiet. The validation I had been desperately seeking from him for 25 years no longer held the same power. His quiet acknowledgement was not a trophy I had won, but a bookmark as simple. Quite close to a painful chapter I was finally ready to move on from, because I realized something in the clear, calm light of that morning. A truth that had been crystallizing since the night of my grandfather's party. You can spend your whole life chasing your parents' approval, bending yourself into impossible shapes, trying to fit into the mold they carved out for you. You can contort your dreams to match their definition of success, silencing the unique song your own heart is begging to sing. But the real power, the profound and unshakable kind, doesn't come the day they finally hand you their blessing. It comes the moment you finally stop needing it. It arrives when you realize that the most important person who needs to believe in your journey, in your messy, beautiful, unconventional path, is the person you see in the mirror every single morning. My success was not a rebuttal to my father. It was a confirmation for myself. The late nights, the stubborn hope, the faith I'd placed in my own 2 hands, it had all been worth it. My studio was still small, my plants were still a little temperamental, but they were part of my story, a story of resilience I was proud to be writing. If you've ever been made to feel less than by your own family, if you've ever sat at a dinner table and felt your spirit shrink under the weight of a careless comment, if you've ever been the punchline to a joke that was never really a joke to you, then you know this feeling. You know the hollow ache of being misunderstood by the very people who are supposed to know you best. Hit subscribe. Not just to my channel, but to your own potential. Subscribe to the quiet, stubborn voice inside you that whispers, "They are wrong about me." Nurture that voice. Feed it with your small victories and your quiet determination. Because you and I, we're not failures. We never were. Our timelines are our own. Our passions don't fit on a spreadsheet, and our victories can't always be measured in a salary or a job title. We are the artists, the dreamers, the late bloomers. We are just writing a different kind of success story, one with a more complex plot, richer characters, and a payoff that is infinitely sweeter because we built it ourselves, from the ground up. And that story is only just beginning.